Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to take you along with me as I give this vintage cabinet I purchased secondhand a makeover. Turns out it happens to be a globe cabinet. Other than that, I couldn't really find out much information about it. It was in pretty rough shape, some parts needed replacing, but a lot of the really great parts were still intact. The inside was pretty musty smelling. The guy I purchased it from had it in an outbuilding for several years. His grandfather owned this piece and was an architect who left several treasures behind. If you enjoy watching this sort of thing and would like to see how I turned this vintage cabinet into this, stay tuned. Okay guys, here's the piece again. The only thing I've done so far is I've removed all of the hardware and all the inserts for all the drawers. As you can see, I've separated them into individual bags, a modular piece so I can stack it any way I want. There is a whole bunch of little screws and everything in here. Other than that, I've just cleaned it. Let me tell you right off the bat, if you have one of these, be prepared to spend several hours cleaning it. It took me about 4 hours to get this guy cleaned, just because I had to clean all the individual drawers, every layer. I'm excited to get started on this now. I'm not sure if I'm gonna stain it yet or if I'm gonna go ahead and paint it. But first things first, we gotta start sanding this guy, so let's get right to it. Looking at the top of this cabinet, imagine the stories it would tell if it could. It has gouges, ink spots, it has got coffee rings, it even has a burnt marking on it. So I had to handle attacking this with a little more aggression than normal. I started off with the 120 grit sandpaper. Even though the top of this cabinet was veneer, I needed something a little stronger to kind of cut through a lot of that stuff. I wasn't able to get out all of the markings by far, but I'll show you later how I approached that. For the most part, the rest of the cabinet happened to be pretty much solid wood. In searching online, I was not able to find a single globe cabinet that had doors with glass in them like this one. So if you have any information about it, the time period or any kind of history, I'd love for you to share. My husband surprised me with this surf prep sander for my birthday. So this was my first opportunity trying it out. I was able to get into all these corners that I wasn't able to get to with my orbital sander pretty easily. If anybody's interested in a non-affiliated review on this surf prep sander, just let me know. After I've gotten a little more use out of it, I'd be more than happy to do that kind of review for you. I was going to just leave these drawers as is, but as you can see, even after being cleaned, they're still kind of gross. There are parts of them that are rusted out and the paint's kind of completely worn off. So what's the point of redoing the outside if I'm not going to do anything to the inside? I'll have to remove all these little tiny screws, so let's get that done. Oh my gosh guys, there was so many of these little screws in all of these drawers. There was 6 screws each in the bigger drawers and there was 4 screws each in the smaller drawers. Thankfully they were all the same size, so I just put them all together in a little baggie and I set it aside just like I had all the tiers of the cabinet. I use several different products on metal, but one of my all-time favorite products to use on all different types of metal is this Metal Rescue Rust Remover Bath. It's non-toxic, doesn't have any smells, it won't hurt your skin, and you just need a very small amount of it. So I just put a little bit in each of the little baggies and I'll set them aside later to put into the sun. but I've used this product to successfully restore antique sewing machines, so it's very near and dear to my heart. The previous owner had duct tape placed over these holes on the smaller drawers for obvious reasons, but I needed to get the sticky residue off, so I just used a little bit of rubbing alcohol and some steel wool, and it just magically disappeared. As you can tell, the insides really needed a good makeover as well, so I decided to spray paint them with Rust-Oleum spray paint in the color Oil Rubbed Bronze. I was still undecided about what color or what stain I was going to use on the cabinet at this point, and I figured this Oil Rubbed Bronze would probably complement almost anything. Really, in my opinion, the only way that you can make a big mess of any spray paint job is to become too greedy while you're spray painting. Several thin coats, letting it dry completely in between is the way to go. To get full opacity, I only needed 2 coats. Since I had a decent amount of filling to take care of, I mixed up a little bit of Bondo. You always want to make sure to mix your Bondo product and to squeeze around the hardener in the tube because it likes to separate and get kind of like watery in a way. I use a generous amount of hardener all the time because I'm real impatient. I like it to dry and set up quickly. I use the Bondo to patch up where the old hardware on the glass door was. So you can see it was completely shattered. And I also used it to fill in the really deep scratches and the areas where the veneer was missing on the top part of the cabinet. I also put a little bit on that burnt marking just to see if it would kind of hide it. I wasn't sure if it was going to do it or not. And then I sanded everything smooth with 220 grit sandpaper. And since I had the drawers taken apart for spray painting, I went ahead and sanded the front parts just a little further where I originally wasn't able to reach. Then it was time to build a base on the bottom part of the cabinet. So I had a thick enough piece of wood to attach the legs. I just used scrap wood I had laying around the house, laid it on top of the area, and made a marking at the edge where I needed to cut. This is real simple technique to do, so you don't actually have to measure. Once I cut that piece out, I went back and I placed it on top of the cabinet to make sure it was the right length. It was perfect, so I used that one board on top of another one to make my marking for the second piece on the other side. And then with both of those pieces in place, I made a marking for the middle insert by placing it on top and just drawing a line. And a perfect fit. To attach the new boards onto the bottom, I used a little bit of Titebond glue and then just tacked them into place with a brad nailer. However, if you didn't have a brad nailer, a clamp is more than sufficient. Once this glue dries, it's a very, very strong bond. Especially for those of you who are starting out. Don't feel like you have to go and buy all of these expensive gadgets right away. Trust me, I have slowly worked up to the tools that I have, and I am still working on it. Remember all the hardware that we had soaking in that metal rescue? Well, it's clean, but before you do anything else, you gotta give it one good rinse. I always pat dry all the parts first, and then I kind of spread them out on a towel afterwards and just walk away, let them completely air dry. Because once they're dry, if you don't add any kind of oil back onto them, they're going to start to rust up again. So I use a little bit of oil that I've used for many years. It's Nifty Notion's Zoom Spout. It's actually a sewing machine oil, but it's a very thin, clear oil that won't gunk anything up. And I use it for door hinges. I use it for screws and of course sewing machines and a lot of different things. It's a really good oil. On the parts that need a little bit of polishing, I did use a metal polish on top of it. I went with Brasso. And the reason why I went ahead and used a metal polish instead of just something like Barkeeper's Friend is because an actual metal polish will not only make it nice and shiny, it's also going to leave a little bit of a waxy film behind, which will keep the shine on longer. So I purchased this Coco Nix Wood Restore Kit off of Amazon, and this was my first attempt in using it. I have successfully color matched darker woods in the past by just kind of painting with an artist brush. I will have to tell you though, trying to color match natural oak was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I wasn't able to get an exact match, but I knew I was going to be whitewashing over the top of this anyways. And honestly, this is a piece I'm keeping for myself. A few little flaws don't really bother me, and it's the top part of the cabinet. Once I put the legs in place, I'm only 5'2", I'm not even going to see it. To blend in that new base that we made for the cabinet, I used some of this oak edge banding. What it is it's a self-adhesive thin strip of veneer, real veneer. So it's going to blend in that scrap wood and turn it the same type of wood that the cabinet is. I just place it on there and then iron it on with an iron. Don't worry, this isn't my iron for regular clothes. This one is strictly for crafts. Medium heat, no steam, real slow. Okay, so since we're already like this, I figured let's go ahead and attach the legs. These are the legs that I got. They're just hairpin legs. And I think they're gonna be pretty cute. So I got these guys on Amazon. I'll leave a link. But let's go ahead and just attach these guys. I used 1-inch wood screws to attach the legs onto the bottom. As you can see, a 1-inch screw would have went all the way through the original base of this cabinet. That's why it was important to build up the layers. The 1-inch screw now will go through not only the legs, the new wood, it's also going to go into the original layer of the cabinet as well, making it for a really strong grip. Yes, the legs are on, it's right side up. This project is progressing. Nice, freshly sanded canvas. It's all ready for whitewashing. If you didn't catch that earlier, I'm gonna whitewash this cabinet to look like bleached oak. I wanna show you the bottom part though, where I attach that edge banding. Look how nice it looks. It actually looks like a part of the original cabinet. Using a 1-to-1 ratio of paint and water, I made myself a whitewash. I chose to use chalk paint because chalk paint is a really thick, full coverage paint that gives a great whitewash. I use the color Buttercream in Dixie Belle. This color in particular has a little bit of a brown undertone, which I thought would complement the wood nicely. I went ahead and left the spoon inside of my wash because being that it's a chalk paint, all the paint will start to settle down to the bottom of your wash. So in between each board, I just give it a good mix before I start applying it. You want to apply it completely on to each piece and preferably in sections because you don't want this wash to dry on you. Once it's applied, you want to just wipe away
and try to get even strokes in between. I am no professional in whitewashing, but from just my bit of experience, as long as you don't let your whitewash dry on you prematurely, it will settle down fairly evenly. As you can see, I keep this wash mixed up pretty frequently. And it's such a thick wash that after only putting one coat, I was pretty happy with the color, so I stopped there. But you can do as many coats as you want and get it the tone that you prefer. The only part of this cabinet that was pine was this backer. So the inside gave me a little bit of a problem, and you'll see that here in a bit. After I put the whitewash to the top of the cabinet, it didn't blend in completely, as expected, but I wasn't mad at it. And from a distance, it really doesn't look that bad. Like I said before, I'm keeping this piece, and those flaws just add character in my opinion. After everything was completely dry, I sealed the entire piece with DIY wax in clear. This particular wax I knew would not add any kind of yellowing onto my bleach wood look and would give a layer of protection that I felt I needed because this is going to go into my craft room. I know a lot of people don't necessarily seal over their bleach wood looks, but it kind of gave me peace of mind. And I knew once this wax was completely dry, it would absorb back into the wood and still look like natural wood, unlike a liquid top coat would have. Maybe I'm just an old school kind of girl, but there's something about wax. I just love it. I like the way it feels. I like the way it looks. Are you a wax person? Do you like it? Do you hate it? Let me know in the comments below. I then reached for my DIY white wax and applied it with an old brush I have specifically for my white wax. As you can tell, this brush is old, it was broken, and I fixed it. And a little tiny artist brush to get into those little tiny grooves. I applied just a very small amount of the white wax and worked it into that backer. You can tell that that pine wood, for some reason, didn't take the whitewash as well as the rest of the cabinet. So this little bit of white wax really worked a miracle to balance everything out. Since I had the white wax already out, I decided to try it in the corners and the little grooves of the rest of the cabinet just to see if I liked the way it looked. I knew that if I didn't like the way it looked, because I had already applied a layer of clear wax, I could just easily wipe it away. After I applied the white wax, I really liked the way it looked, so I went ahead and also applied it to the sides of the cabinet on those insets and just lightly brushed it wherever I thought I needed a highlight. It also came in handy on the inside of the doors that didn't take the whitewashing as well as the rest of the cabinet did. So I brightened up those areas as well. And just to give you a little teaser, here's a side-by-side shot of the natural wood versus after the whitewashing and white wax. Then it was time to put everything together. Look at all this nice, shiny, clean hardware. I know a lot of people might think I'm crazy for taking everything apart and scrubbing it and oiling it, but in all honesty, I'm never gonna take this cabinet apart to this extent ever again. So why not go that extra mile and just put a little extra love into it? Maybe I'm weird, but it really is kind of gratifying to see it all come together and know that I put that extra step in there, and to finally see that enclosure work, yes, feels so good. Do you guys remember this old drawer, pull, knob, enclosure, whatever you want to call it? He's seen better days, so I replaced him with a vintage enclosure that I found off of eBay. All brass. I thought finding a vintage one versus just going out and buying a new one was more appropriate and a lot cooler in my opinion. All I did was start some pilot holes where the screws were going to be placed, and then I screwed those in by hand very slowly because I did not want to crack the glass. Then it came time to put all the drawers back together. It was something I was not looking forward to because I knew there was so many little screws and bits and pieces. But I just sucked it up and put on a nice movie and grabbed myself something to drink. I knew I was going to be there for a while. Honestly, after seeing all the drawers slowly come back together, seeing all the nice shiny bits back on them, seeing the metal look fresh and revitalized with the new paint and that nice wood, it was like I was putting a brand new cabinet back together. And I was just thinking about all the fun things I was going to put inside of it and how I was going to have it stored and staged in my craft room. With the turn of that final screw, this project was done, but let's take a look back on where we started.